phase of this impact formula. Now, the next welcome to the first session and the first phase of this impact formula. Now, the next section is emotional certainty. Now, if you are a closer and you're getting, let's say, inbound appointments, or even if you're doing your own outbound, this is the section you want to start your sales calls off of. If you're a setter, do not go through this section just because it's probably going to confuse you. Make sure you go through Andreas' sections, but if you were a closer, this is where I'm going to break down the exact framework I have used to make 7 figures in commissions. Okay, now, whenever you get an inbound lead, you're probably going to start off a call by recapping the notes of the setter, or if you set that on appointment, you're going to recap what you did in intent, right, and logical certainty. Now, once you recap that, it's going to sound something like this. Like, hey man, I know you spoke with XYZ, or I know you and I had chatted earlier and you kind of mentioned X, Y, and how kind of it's inconsistent. That's kind of where you're at now, right? In a nutshell. And they're going to say yes. Your very next question and your very next phase in the script is called emotional certainty. Now realize one thing, every human being needs to be logically certain and emotional certain. This is the exact verbiage of how you want to do it. Now, the next question you're going to ask people is going to be what I like to call an identity shift, okay? And what this question is meant to do, this question is meant to eliminate the most common objection. So take a sec right now and really think, what is the biggest objection you get? I'll give you some example. If I sell fitness, the biggest objection I'm probably going to get by somebody is, hey man, like I'll just do it on my own, right? I'll just try to figure it out. If I sell business coaching, maybe the objection I'm going to get is, I'm just going to go figure it out on YouTube. If I sell sales training and I'm dealing with egotistical salespeople, right? Maybe they'll say something like, I'll just take more calls. So what I want you to think about right now is, what is the biggest objection that your prospects give you? And then I'm going to show you how to frame this question. Now, there are a few different ways you can word this. The way I like to word this is this. Okay, man, so I guess just so I see the rationale, or just so I understand, what's the main reason you're even possibly looking for X, rather than just doubling down on what you're currently doing and just continuing with Y? Okay, now there are a few ways you can do this, a few examples. Let's say I sell fitness. Okay, man, and so just so I understand, but besides obviously wanting to lose weight so you can, get into shape and feel better, what's the main reason you're even possibly looking to kind of get more of a personal trainer, rather than just kind of continue just going on YouTube and trying to figure it out like kind of the average people, right? So if you notice that, notice the tonality and how I'm super curious, but what I'm doing in that question is I'm getting them to justify to me why the biggest objection that they would normally give me is invalid. And so this is when you start playing with somebody's identity, right? And you start using identity frames through questioning, not bullshit reframes, because all I'm causing the person to do is justify. Another example, let's pretend I sell business coaching. So I might say something like this. Hey man, just so I see the rationale, but I guess besides wanting to obviously grow your business, you could make more revenue and increase your profitability. What's the main reason you're possibly looking for more of a business coach, rather than just maybe going on YouTube and trying to figure it out yourself? And then what is the prospect going to do? They're going to justify to you every reason why they can't do that. And so now you've eliminated the number one objection. Okay, so what you need to think about is, what is the number one objection you might get from a prospect? That is what you add into this identity shift and future pace question. Okay, when you ask this question, you are very curious and skeptical. So watch my tonality and watch my facial expressions. I'm going to give another fitness example. Okay, man, and so I guess just so I see the rationale, but besides obviously wanting to lose weight so that you're able to kind of feel better, get into shape, but what is the main reason you're even possibly looking for more of a personal trainer, rather than maybe just trying to figure it out like the kind of average person does and never lose weight? What's really causing that? Well, because of X, because of Y, because of Z. So notice that every time I go over the concept of getting a personal trainer or getting more advanced training, I increase my hand motion here because I show them the elevation, rather than just, continuing just trying to figure it out on your own, right? When I put my hand down, unconsciously the person internalizes that. Okay, so that's the first question you're gonna ask. This is the question where, as soon as the prospect answers this, you're looking for answers like, oh, well, I don't wanna do that because, I can't figure it out, or I've tried, or it hasn't worked. I'm looking for a legit answer from this to actually figure out why they don't feel like they can do it on their own. So this question here is meant to sort of eliminate the do it by yourself objection, right? I'll just figure it out. So make sure that when you ask this question, you get people to justify to you why they can't figure it out. If I sell fitness, it needs to be something like, hey man, I can't do it because I've been overweight for 5 years, so obviously it's not working. If I sell business coaching, maybe they say something like, well, the business has hit a plateau and I can't grow it. If I sell sales training, right, the way when I used to sell sales training, the way I would ask it is hey man, just so I see the rationale, but besides obviously wanting to, increase your commissions so you can make more sales, more commissions, all that jazz, but what's even the main reason you're possibly looking at more of that advanced training, rather than just going on YouTube like the average sales rep does? And then they would justify to me why they wanted more advanced training. Okay, so that's the first question. Now, as soon as I finish that, I'm gonna go into my next question, which is, this is where, if you guys wanna know where 90% of your sales are made as a salesperson, it's here. And this is what we call initial question in emotional certainty, which is this. Think about it this way. I figured out the intent, I've created logical certainty. I've got them to justify to me why they can't do it by themselves. So now what my goal is to figure out is I'm trying to figure out what has this person done in the past about solving their problem. If I can understand what this human being has done, regardless of the product or service I sell, if I can figure out what this person has done to solve their problem, which chances are they haven't done any. An overweight person who hasn't got a personal trainer in 5 years hasn't really done much to solve their problem. And so my goal is to frame the conversation differently of why has this person not invested in themselves to solve their problem, or if they have invested in themselves and they haven't got the solution, why not? I'll explain how this would work. I'll give you a few examples. Let's say I sell fitness. Okay, I'll keep it consistent with the role plays we're doing. Okay, man, so before we started speaking today, I guess what have you done then about, getting more of like a personal trainer so that you were able to kind of, lose the weight, feel better, and like get into shape? Like, what have you done about getting more of like a personalized coaching plan? And let's pretend they say, well, man, I haven't done anything. I've only done YouTube, or I've only, searched up random things on Google. I probably have to uncover why they haven't done shit about solving their problem. So then I'm going to go into my new line of questioning, which is going to be, okay, that's not a problem. What actually prevented you from like getting more of like advanced training of a personal trainer so you could lose weight and get into shape? Now, when I ask this question of what prevented you, I really want you to think carefully here. I'm looking for the truth, not some bullshit surface level answer. Okay? And when I used to sell fitness and I used to ask people this question, sometimes they would say things like, oh, I didn't even know I could. And I'd be like, well, hey man, there are gyms for a reason and those have been around for over a decade. You probably knew something. This is the answer where most people will try to bullshit. They'll try to tell you like, oh, I didn't know this and that. Total bullshit. Every human being knows that they can hire somebody to solve their problem. They haven't. And it's getting them to own up to why they haven't. So when I used to sell sales training, it would sound something like this. Okay, man, so tell me one thing. Like before we started speaking today, like what have you done then about getting more advanced training so you can make more commissions, more sales, all that jazz? Like what have you actually done about getting more advanced training to get to that next level? And it's like, man, I haven't really done anything. I've only done like YouTube or company training. Okay, and so what prevented you from getting more advanced training to get to that next level? And usually they would say things like, oh, well, I didn't think I needed this and that. And so I'd repeat the question. I'd be like, okay, man, like that aside, what actually prevented you from getting more advanced training to get to the next level? And the answer I was looking for in that question was the truth, which in this situation when selling sales training to salespeople was like, hey man, I was lazy. I thought I was good enough. Like I didn't know I needed it because my ego was too big. I was looking for the truth, which usually was one of those three things. As soon as I get what I need out of this question, then I'm going to transition into the next question to get them to own up of why now is the right time. Now I'm not going to do it in a salesy way, which is like, hey man, like why now? I'm going to go right into it. Okay man, so what shifted? What shifted now that made you feel as if you needed more advanced training to get to that next level? So what shifted now that made you feel as if you needed more of a coach so you could lose this weight? So what shifted now that made you feel like as if you need a coach to actually grow the business? So notice the way this works. If in the what prevented you from doing something, I get a bullshit answer, right? They give me some bullshit and they don't give me the truth. And if I accept that and then I go into what shifted now, I'm gonna get a surface level answer for that as well. So what you gotta think about right now is like, when you ask the question of what prevented somebody from investing in themselves or whatever the case might be, what answer do you actually want, right? If I sell fitness, I want an answer like, I was scared, I was afraid, or, I didn't want to spend the money. This is where you figure out the real objection. This is how you pre-handle it. Because this question tells you exactly what objection this person has had for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, doesn't matter, that has prevented them to take the action to actually solve this problem. This is how you pre-handle objection, okay? So when I sold sales training, again, I wanted people to tell me the truth, which was usually they had a big ego, they were lazy, whatever it was. And then as soon as they would give me the truth, then I would transition. Okay, man, so what shifted now? That made you feel as if you need more of that advanced training to get to the next level. And then when I asked that question, I wanted, usually for people, it's an experience, right? So like, they say something along the lines of like, hey man, like I just had a kid. Or hey man, like, I saw my commission check and it made me feel depressed. When I used to sell fitness and I used to say, what shifted now? Usually people would say, I'm a father, I'm a mother now, or, I just hit an all-time high on the weight scale. And so now I know I need to do something, okay? So that's just an example of like what you're really looking for. And then later on in the course, you're gonna see actual like live role plays of like how this would actually function, okay? But that's a general idea. Now, as soon as I figured this out, right? So understand what I've done here. If you look at all these questions in emotional certainty in the first section, I've created an identity shift because I've got the person to justify to me why they can't do this on their own. I've got them to justify to me and themselves why they haven't taken action. And now I've also got them to justify what has shifted that makes them want to take action. So now I've created what I call an identity shift. Now, in order for an identity shift to stay true, I have to create a future pace and I have to create a destination that makes it worthwhile keeping that identity. When people make an identity shift, I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm overweight, all right? And I watch a really inspiring motivational video or a story about somebody who lost weight. In order for me, once I go through that video, I have an identity shift where it's like, I don't want to be fat anymore, I want to be fit. For me to sustain that identity shift, I have to have a compelling future. Okay, so I'll describe it to you this way. Whenever somebody makes an identity shift, let's say I smoke, right? I smoke cigarettes. For me to quit cigarettes, I need to have an identity shift. Maybe I see somebody that died from cancer at 32 because they were smoking too many cigarettes. That created an identity shift in my mind. But now I need a compelling enough future that causes me to say, I'm not going to smoke again. Every human being needs a compelling future. And if you're going to get somebody to have an identity shift, there has to be something that causes them to want to sustain that shift. In your situation, you're trying to get them to sustain it till the end of the pitch. So they spend the 5, 10, 15, 20 grand, whatever you charge. But to sustain that, they need something to look forward to, okay? Once I've created that, we're gonna go into what I call future pacing. Now, this is how you do future pacing, okay? And this is why I was able to go a lot deeper in my sales calls, because I actually mastered this, okay? And this is how it works. Once you finish the identity shift, you're gonna go into, okay, man, so let's say, there was a way to possibly kind of help you with, being able to lose that 50 pounds so that you were able to feel better and look better. So let's say, man, there was a way to possibly